Hello, all terminal listeners. In this episode, we'll talk about college sports, sports on TV, and the end of Madison Square Garden as a venue for sports for the rest of the summer. But first, in the words of a bald orange man, commerce.
Since 1994, one name has echoed through the courts, fields, and arenas of New Jersey: Jersey Sporting News. As a credentialed media outlet with over 25 years of experience, we've earned accolades from those we cover at every level. Jersey Sporting News, celebrating New Jersey sports for over 2 decades, and we're just getting started. Let JSN become a member of your family.
Hello, hi, and welcome again to the Terminal Podcast, where in the end, it's all about the numbers. This is a show about baseball, winning season, and with VR goggles growing more and more lifelike by the minute, it's not always baseball season. I am your host, and we are broadcasting high above Civic Center Station in downtown Atlanta. And tonight, two THS grads will talk about the ending of sports. Ending of sports at Madison Square Garden for the summer, the apparently ending of NBA on TNT, and the end of the NCAA as we didn't really know it. Chris, what's an ending you enjoy discussing with others and not in private?
I will discuss to the death the quality of the final episode of all three of my favorite television shows: MASH, Cheers, and Seinfeld.
Fair. I was going to say, there's no argument, I guess.
Well,
The only,
MASH is regarded,
yeah,
but Cheers and Seinfeld have a lot of detractors, and I will argue to the death with those idiots.
I
People.
mean, I remember it's because he gets on the plane with Diane, right? In Cheers.
No.
Oh, he doesn't get on the plane.
He
So
stays at the bar.
that's the alternative version of it. Because someone was just mentioning that, and I
Right.
saw the picture of him sitting in it, and I was like, I don't think I've ever seen that. But
Norm says to him, Sammy, you'll always come back to your one true love. You can never be dishonest to her, or something like that. And
yeah,
Sammy looks around and realizes the bar is his love.
is this love? That makes sense. So between your true loves, is the Rangers or the Knicks? Is there a one that has more of your heart or what?
No, I'd say I'm equally with both of them. The Rangers have more of a shot of actually winning the championship this year. I don't think the Knicks had a realistic shot
Yeah, no.
without Julius Randle. And
Yeah.
then as the injuries started piling up, obviously they didn't have a shot.
I said to someone, I was going to say, did you really want to see the Knicks win that and then have to go against Boston without Mitchell Robinson, without, you know what I mean? Like all the people that you wouldn't, because of all the injuries, you wouldn't be
Yeah.
playing without. You know what I mean? It would have been like,
And then when Brunson got hurt, they were within
that's,
7 when Brunson got hurt. God
mhm.
forbid they would have somehow found a way to win the game. And now you have Anunoby, who was not going to play again,
Yes,
Brunson, who
that's
was
my,
not going to play again.
yeah.
Like you were going to start Deuce McBride, Dante DiVincenzo, an injured Josh Hart, Precious Achua, and Isaiah Hartenstein in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Exactly. So would you have wanted to see that for 4 games? Because it would have
No.
been 4 games. It would have been,
Yeah.
yeah, it would have been
Listen,
a
they played
bloodletting.
really well this season. You can't argue. As people say, in these idiot sports fans and, about, was it a successful season? No, you didn't win a championship. And there's that great Giannis quote from 2 years ago, which I'm sure you've seen, or if not, it's just a great a response to a reporter's question. It's so poignant if you haven't seen it. But it was a successful season for the Knicks. They did really well. My buddy Bill Pfeiffer used to say 25, 30 years ago when we were in college, only one team can win the championship, guys. That's it. They only
Well,
allow one to go with the trophy.
the NHL has a similar system. They only allow one to lift the Stanley Cup, and the NHL playoffs, including the Rangers, are down to floor or four. Rangers, Florida, Dallas, and Edmonton, who came back last night. I was watching that, and they were up 2-1 pretty much through 2 periods. I want to say they didn't score in the first. There was 3 goals total, but 2-1 in the third. In the second, I go to sleep and wake up and hear it went to overtime. Is Does Edmonton and Connor need to win the Stanley Cup to legitimize his ranking, as because he's always referred to and talked about as this legendary player? Does he have to get one, or is he good enough with just the numbers?
Well, when you say does he have to get one, he came in toward the tail end of the Crosby Ovechkin era, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And this is his era and there's no other dominant player in this era that's won a cup. There's no other player really on his level. We talked about it with Josh in the preview. Maybe Austin Matthews and his team can't get out of the first round. So he does need at least one Stanley Cup to legitimize him when you start ranking all-time greats, because he's going to be in that conversation. And again, in the sport of hockey, like I think basketball definitely, and listen, football quarterback for what it's worth, the championships are where you parse the argument. Right?
Yeah, true.
Like when people say, "Oh, is who's greater, Jordan or LeBron?" or that, nobody's saying LeBron's bad, or if someone says LeBron's better, no one's saying Jordan's bad. Like you're splitting hairs.
In comparisons of the 10 greats, it's basically you're arguing 2 and 4, something along those numbers. It's still the 10 greatest players of all time, but you're arguing where those numbers, where those numbers should be locked in. So
the championships give you a little more credence in the argument. It's the Peyton Manning, Tom Brady argument. People go, "Oh, Peyton Manning was great in the regular season." Well, the regular season games count. I mean, they pay people for that. Like, they keep a record. You get money for it. Like, so those count.
With that same argument in mind, is it important for him to at least get one while some of those old names are still around? Because Lemieux is in the same. Mario Lemieux and that whole Penguins run back in the 90s came on the end of Edmonton, the end of Gretzky,
Edmonton Island and the Islanders.
That whole thing where he's able to say, you're able to go, but Lemieux got one before everybody left, and then got a bunch more. You know what I mean? Like,
I got two. He got back to back. 90 and 91. He got back to back. But that's good, right? So Lemieux's in that argument. Right, because of the back-to-back championships.
He's forgotten. He's seeming. I love that he just seemingly is. They forget Jaromir Jagr, which we talked about before. But it's like there's a bunch of these guys that are just forgotten for whatever reason. But
I think McDavid needs it. And listen, there's 4 teams left. The problem is, of the 4, they have the worst goaltender. And hockey is a sport that can be won by a goaltender in the playoffs, and we've seen it a million times.
So who you got?
If I had to put money on it, I would still put money on Dallas.
Down one? No, they're up.
Yeah, no, they're down. They're
down, and they just lost in their own building.
But Ottinger, their goalie, man, he scares me, and Sagan, and they're good and they're tough. If I'm the Rangers, I do not want to play them. I've seen the Rangers play them twice this year, and they might have won one, but it was just I'm afraid of Dallas.
I'm running through my head now. I want to say Steve Levy is on maybe the pregame post. There's a name for that whole thing, I guess.
With ESPN, Steve Levy. Yeah.
So Steve, but I can't imagine who's on TNT. Like who's any of the names, or Like, I want to say
the hockey players. It's the black guy.
Subban.
Anson Carter, sometimes Kevin Weeks, sometimes on Messier. This guy Paul Bissonnette, who's a former tough guy. He's really funny. He's like the comic relief. And it's hosted by this guy Liam McHugh, who's been a host for NBC TNT for a while.
Okay,
it's a solid pregame show, because I know you're going to get into that.
That's what I'm transitioning to. It's like we talk about age, and it's like I'm not that old, but apparently I'm old enough, are you as well, to remember the NFL Today when it was on CBS, and that was the gold standard, right? It was, because it was the announcing of Monday Night Football with Cosell and his compatriots and everything like that was the gold standard for, that was considered the best team, right? Pretty much in the 70s, and then Madden and Summerall kind of take it over, but no one talked about the studio show. No one talked about Irv Cross and the guys before the game started.
Phyllis George, and then they talk about Jimmy the Greek,
and that was the thing, because Jimmy the Greek but that was the NFL Today, right?
Right, yeah.
So
on Brett Musburger,
how big are those talking about the game in comparison to the game itself? Is essentially the question, because we talk about football from that time, and you mentioned Jimmy the Greek, and we think about Madden because of the things he did, but I don't think anybody talks about the studio shows. Except for the overall aspect of it. You know what I mean?
The pundits talk about the studio shows. Um, a studio show again. Some marketing people and some agents will bring up some fancy numbers to show you, to justify. But I'm not much of a pre and post game show guy. I just, as I've gotten older, I've lost interest in that. Part of it's maybe time, and even though I don't have children, like you have children, so like just
You
and
find
other people.
time.
I'm not just saying you, other
Yeah, I
people
know.
in the zeitgeist. The 3 hour window to watch your team is maybe all you can carve out with stuff you have to do for your kids and your wife and your job and your.
Mm-hmm.
So at 46, I mean, if I get a chance to watch it, I have it on, but I'm not like I have it on, but I'm usually doing something.
So, which is why I find it so fascinating that there's this huge conversation because of the millions slash billions of dollars that is getting ready to be spent on broadcasting the NBA, which I you could argue with me that the NBA is now the number two sport in America. I'd say it's three, but you know, either way, it's not one. It's not one.
It's
And
not
it's
Michael
not one.
Jordan,
It's not one, and it's not one by a grand far
right?
distance. You know what I mean? And it's like, so we're talking about the third the third broadcast because ESPN's already got their signed deal. Amazon apparently is going to be one of the streaming networks that's going to be put on NBA games because there are countless NBA games that I don't watch, and I'm certain you don't watch either, that aren't in the NBA app. But this third broadcast partner is going to be apparently NBC as opposed to TNT. And so the NBA on TNT, and it's Tuesday and Thursday nights with EJ, Ernie Johnson, Kenny the Jet Smith, Shaquille O'Neal, and Charles Barkley is apparently going away. Would you like to a couple of moments to say some kind words about
Well,
this?
so forget everything I just said about pre and post game shows.
Mm-hmm.
This is the one people watch. People that don't watch the NBA, this is the one people watch, YouTube clips or TikTok clips, and will mention to people. I've had people mention to me that I know don't watch NBA basketball talk about something that was talked about on that show. And it could be basketball related, it could be other related, it could just be Charles being Charles, right? Like, it's the one show that people watch of the pre and post game. So it's a big thing that it's going away. And like, I think we talked about this a few episodes ago when we were talking about this maybe happening. You can't force replicate the camaraderie. So even if NBC prized Barkley, Smith, and Shaq away, it's not going to have Ernie Johnson.
Yeah, Ernie Johnson's not going anywhere.
He's not going anywhere.
So
it's going to be
that,
Bob Costas and those three. I mean, Shaq would just pick up Bob Costas and throw him out a window. We'd all be happy.
And Bob Costas.
So we don't have to hear his jackbooted thug ideas about the fucking pitchers hitting like you.
Are you talking about Bob Costas in
Yeah.
that tone of voice? Bob Costas and the whole
Oh, it was
thing,
great when pitchers hit 097 for a season. That's what we need back in baseball.
Well, me and Bob are definitely on the same fence with that because they're athletes the entire time. The pitcher used to be the best athlete on the team. That guy was,
Yeah, we also didn't let women vote for the first 150 years of the country, but we wound up thought about it was better and we changed it.
Okay.
I won't even go to the other big one because I don't want to make the show controversial.
It's
first couple hundred years in this country, we're like, yeah, that's a good idea, and then we're like, probably not.
Well, not everybody, but
true.
But so
touche, Martin. Touche.
Talked about how great the NBA on TNT is. Just a general question: is it just another studio show similar to the way the NFL today was just a really good studio show, or do you feel it's as influential as what I think is the hands down most influential studio sports show ever, which is Pardon the Interruption? So are you nodding your head no on disagreeing with what I'm saying, or?
Yes, the TNT show is the most influential studio show, but here's what I'll say about it. They didn't break any new ground with the studio show. They just found the right
Yes.
mix of people.
Yeah. Yeah. And that I'll agree.
And I will argue against, pardon the interruption, only a little bit. And and I mean, this is the fake pardon the interruption that we're doing
Hmm.
right here.
Essentially.
Pardon the interruption was basically a spin-off of what show?
Sports reporters.
Right. So I would
Yeah.
say the sports reporters would
Okay.
be the more influential show.
And
But
the
pardon the
only
interruption
reason
is just a child of the sports reporters.
and the only reason I think the child is better than the adult is because the child has influenced other like the essentially news broadcasts look like PTI now. You know what I
Okay,
mean? Whether it's
I'll
CNN, you know
get
what I mean?
I will concede that again. Yeah, I
Yeah,
understand what you're saying, 100.
yeah.
percent
Oh yeah, but it's in terms of the entertainment value and everything like that, yeah, sure, you can argue whatever you want to say, but and the NBA on TNT is probably a more entertaining show at on the
Yeah,
overall grand scheme of things. You'll get more laughs out of that than you will PTI for certain. But
yeah. But it's just
the
like it's
influence
like
of it,
yeah, sort of the original, maybe the original sports reporter, as I was going to say, in like a context of like rap and hip hop music, like. You could talk
mm,
about some early pioneers, whatever. You could talk about like
yeah,
Sugar Hill Gang being like the sports reporters, but it was Run DMC that
yeah,
like,
who then took off. Yeah, no, it
yeah,
yes, you know, um, and at some point, someone's gonna meet the press is like, we did this. It was just we
it
were
was boring.
talking.
It was
It
just we
was
were talking about
boring, but it
boring
was
things.
extremely boring.
Yeah.
It was extremely boring. Video games are not boring because if they were, then they wouldn't continue. It's been the mainstream. It's been in the mainstream for the majority of our lives, pretty much all our lives, because Pac-Man and the stand-ups were there beforehand. But the sports games didn't come around until us. Until we were of the age to play them. There was a baseball game, but it wasn't anything. What is
Are you saying
your
RBI baseball was not the greatest thing ever?
well, that's what I was going to say. What is your first sports video game of significance? Is it RBI Baseball, which is, as far as I'm concerned, one of the best baseball video games going. So,
Sports video game?
just sports video games, not
Yeah,
video games, but
it's probably RBI baseball.
not anything
Followed
else. You
closely
weren't in
by
the,
the NHL 92, 93, 94, 95.
okay. So you weren't a Madden in
Oh no, I did. I had Madden, I had the NBA games, but the NHL game had the
okay.
best.
I brought that up because I remember playing EA Sports NCAA basketball because they had all the sports and how in the 99, 2000, 2001 range, there was this bald, dark skinned forward. It was a 6'9" guy from UCLA, and he had the same skill set as a certain player on the team, but he didn't have the name. And that was Ed O'Bannon. And he filed a lawsuit way back when and the lawsuits that I'm getting ready to quote from the articles, plural, that I read in The Athletic about this whole case, his is the start of it. And like we were
Yeah.
talking about before, his is his is the sports reporters, whereas all these other cases are the children. And to quote from that moment of Ed O'Banion, we now have the NCAA, ACC, Big Ten, Big 12, Pac 12, and SEC voting to allow schools to pay their athletes. The two sides in the House versus NC2A class action lawsuit formally announced terms of a multi-billion-dollar settlement that stands to reshape college sports, including 2.75 billion in back pay damages the NC2A will owe to former Division I athletes like Ed O'Bannon, as well as a future revenue sharing model between power conference schools and athletes. The settlement will also eliminate NC2A scholarship caps. The plaintiff lawyers confirmed in a news release, expected to give way instead to roster limits. There's a lot there. I'm going to take a breath. Chris?
Well, I have not investigated all these issues. I mean, I fringely know about them. Obviously, I was involved in high-level Division I college athletics for a little over a decade, so I've seen and heard lots of things. For a long time, I was not against athletes getting paid, but having some sort of model where they could earn revenue with name, image, and likeness.
Mm-hmm.
um, with wanting to directly pay college athletes, there's a whole host of employment issues you run into,
Uh-huh.
not the least of which is Title IX.
Yeah, yeah. This is gonna.
And
This is why this is gonna be fun. But go ahead, continue.
so, right, not the least of which is Title IX, not the least of which might be discrimination lawsuits.
And
As for the back
discriminating.
pay,
Oh, yeah, no.
well, you can argue, well, this team, their coach seems to recruit more white players than black players.
Oh, I was going with the discrimination of, well, we don't make as much money as the women's basketball team that just got that big TV deal,
Mhm.
but we here in volleyball, soccer, lacrosse, golf, and everything like that,
I
our
put in
student
just as much
athletes, the same,
time. I put in just as
exactly.
much time.
And in fact, because you just switched us into the other part of the conferences, because now we're a Big Ten school. So now I've got to go to Rutgers, and then I've got a game against UCLA next week. So I'm flying across the country. I still got that test that I've got to take.
Well, and
And
here's the
everything like
here's the can of worms you open up. The soccer team's not flying on a
you're not flying
fucking charter jet.
first class,
They're
exactly.
flying commercial,
Exactly.
taking 3 connecting flights to get there. So they're actually on the road more. So they're putting in more time. Right. So,
Yeah, yeah. Can of
and then
worms
as for the
is
back pay, I didn't know much about the back pay
I
thing,
think
but
the back pay is only within like the last 3 or 4 years. It's like it's a short. It's not. We're not going
yeah, but
back
that's
to.
still that's a
It,
slippery slope. Why not
it's
5 years? Why
hey
not 6 years? Then
because that's going. I mean, all of this is the preliminary. I did not go to law school, unfortunately, for my
right.
mother. I don't know, but it's apparently all of this has to go to a judge who then has to approve it, and
Yeah,
that's going
oh,
to
but
take
there's a lot of
months.
steps.
Yeah, there's yeah,
But you can I understand what you're saying. It's going back to when the name, image, and likeness probably case first got settled a couple of years ago, right?
something along those lines. Like I
No,
said,
but again, I know tricky lawyers. I could argue that, well, the lawsuit started in 1998 when Ed
yeah,
O'Bannon first sued.
yeah.
Just because our legal system, our justice system, and go all the way to the Supreme Court takes a while. So starting in '98, you know what I mean? I'm just being
No,
a jerk. Yeah, I'm being
I
devil's
think
advocate a little
in
bit.
that sense, I think the only reason that that wouldn't work, it doesn't make sense to work, is because the length of time it would take to try and get
What,
to that even being a part would be
right,
by the time it's like, are we how much is it worth us to try and go back and fight to get money that by the time we get it might already be gone or might already switched into a new mode? Because all of this
right,
comes back to the fact, as you started with, we're now going to uh, we're going to pay college athletes to play sports for the college that they were recruited for to pay it. Yeah, it's I mean it's yeah, go ahead.
no, it's just it's sort of paraphrasing the old Potter Stewart, the U.S. Supreme Court justice, during one of the obscenity cases in the '60s when they were talking about
Mhm.
like pornography and stuff, and the Motion Picture Rating Association. He said, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it.
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
give you the answers, but I know what's going on now ain't the answers.
Yeah. Well, that's true. And that's true. And I'll admit I thought name, image, and likeness, NIL, it made sense because there was a ton of people who bought jerseys, whether
Mhm.
it was
Right,
a Tennessee number 5 jersey, specifically because that was to me, I mean, like that was Tamika Catchings or something along those lines.
right,
Because it's not just that's the other thing that I really am curious to see. It's not just the men's basketball team. It's not just the football team. Yes, they are the ones that bring the money to the table, but there are other sports. And when it comes to all this other stuff, it's like, how is all this going to get figured out? Is there going to be a price scale? Is it going to be, am I going to get paid more because I'm a football player as
right.
opposed to as opposed to that lacrosse player? I mean, like, yeah.
Well, again, and then you get into I'm averaging 17 a game on the basketball team. This 5-star recruit's averaging 3 points a game, but since he was a 5-star recruit, you're paying him more than you're paying
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. Which then, and that is what honestly, I thought the transfer portal is the most logical and most realistic introduction to all this craziness, because if you're going to be doing this, like any college student, if I'm at a college, if I came and got this, journalism, I went to go get my degree in journalism, and somebody talked to me and said, "Hey, you can come over here and we can guide you better towards what you're trying to do." There's nobody that should be able to stop me from going
Yeah,
to
but
that
you're
other
not getting
school.
paid.
I did that. I didn't go. I said the initial part of the transfer
Oh,
portal.
okay.
I didn't see now where it becomes, well, am I going to get paid more to go over? But that almost as I don't want to say a mimic, but a slight imitation of the job field as is, which is I'm working at my job here. That person is going to offer me more to go there. Why wouldn't you
Right.
go, and I'll, but it becomes a whole gig economy, and that's where we're headed to anyway, where you're going as a contractor most likely, and they don't necessarily have, you're with the contractor. See, that might be where we go, because the college is going to be like, well, because the college just isn't going to respect that the first college gave you that 4-year scholarship. Well, are we going are is the next college on the hook for that same scholarship? You know
Well,
what I
but
mean? Like
scholarships
that's
haven't scholarships haven't been 4 year for years and years. They're 1 year renewables.
really
Yeah, and have been for 30 or 40 years. Yeah.
okay. See, and things that me, even as a somewhat educated sportsman, was not aware of. Huh. So therefore, so it is completely conceivable that uh the other college will be able to pick
Right.
up
Well,
that
depending if
scholarship
you're making
contract.
contracts, like you said, if they're contract employees.
Yeah, which is what apparently is, this is
And then maybe it opens
it's
it up to not just transfer portals, but maybe trades.
nobody trades workers. Workers don't get traded. There's not a three electricians for two plumbers kind of deal that's happening. That doesn't happen. You're not going to trade scholarships. There's the line. Okay. There's the line. All right. We started, and I've pushed in video games, because this is like video games. Like the 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 timeline and of what we've seen. We started, I had an Atari 2600 and I
Yeah, me
played
too.
Pac-Man. And from there to goggles you put on and you're playing as if you're in Yankee Stadium is within our life. I mean, that's within 25, 30 years. And
Yeah.
so you already mentioned it. So we'll end with the first EA Sports version of NHL hockey, which was released in 1991.
Yeah.
Now, the Red Wings and the Maple Leafs are the two original six hockey teams that were left off the cover, and they were replaced by Los Angeles Kings because of Gretzky, Pittsburgh because we just mentioned of Lemieux, Edmonton because they're Edmonton, and the North Stars. Now, when the North Stars moved to Dallas and dropped the North, they took their franchise history with them, their franchise history from Minnesota with them. So when
Mhm.
the Wild were created in 2000, 2001, the history of franchise Hall of Famers, of six franchise Hall of Famers, names like Dino Ciccarelli and Mike Gardner, remained in Minnesota. So how many seasons did the original North Stars play in Minnesota, eh? That's the
NHL
question. How
seasons,
many NHL seasons did the original North Stars play in Minnesota?
18.
There's 18. 18 is the number, and the trivia answer will be in the description for the next episode. I'd like to thank our potential promotional partner, Jersey Sporting News. I'd also like to thank Chris for stopping by and wish him and everyone listening safe travels from the terminal. Have a good evening.